Welcome to the Unfiltered Show from the Score Studios. My name's Joseph Casciaro, and my guests today need no introduction, but I'm going to give them one anyway. They are 2/3 of the Hello and Welcome podcast. You know them well. Along with producer Jerome Chang, they cover the Raptors, the NBA at large, and other culturally relevant topics. They are Will Lou and Alex Wong. My guys, thanks for coming in.
Cash, man. Anytime you ask for us, we're going to be there.
I'm going to hold you to that. You guys are going to be on this show multiple times.
Yeah,
Let's do it. Yeah, I'm 100% down.
Do some home and home. You know, we got to get you as a regular on Hello and Welcome. Beautiful set here, man.
Yeah, man.
You like it? Yeah.
Yo, 100K? Come on, man.
200K now. Oh, the
200?
YouTube channel's over 200K
give you
now.
a second plaque for that one.
You know what? I think the next one comes at $1 million. So
We'll see.
They
That's
should
the gold
give-
one, I think.
First millie's the hardest, man.
That's what they say. All right. Obviously, we got you guys in here, so we want to talk mostly Raptors today. They're gearing up for the 30th season in franchise history, which may or may not involve the color purple, given the way they've been teasing on Instagram. But anyway, that's irrelevant for this topic. As they gear up for this 30th season, it's been tough sledding the last couple years. Do you think the franchise is now back on the right track and is building towards being a contender again? Or do you think they're still a little lost?
Yeah, I mean, to the point about them teasing the purple, I mean, like, what else are they going to tease? Like, you know, not wins. But I think
Guess that's your answer.
for this team right now, they have finally made the hard decision, which they probably could have made sooner after winning the championship. After Kawhi left, the year after, you're not going to try to defend the championship, of course. But from that point onward, the Raptors have sort of been in this sort of like no man's zone of like, yeah, are they really contending? Are they not? They kind of had enough pieces, but they didn't really fit well. They didn't have a center for a long time. They didn't have no guard depth for a while. And eventually it came to a point where this team is kind of underperforming and those guys are getting expensive. Like we saw OG getting signed for $200 million, Pascal getting signed for $200 million. So Fred signing for $40 million a year. So it was like you kind of had to make that decision. And finally last year they made that decision. Now it's kind of just a wait and see. At least they're younger. At least expectations have been reset. And we know that they have one corner piece to build around with Scottie Barnes, but I don't know if that's going to be enough. So we got to see if RJ is going to be that guy, Quickley is going to be that guy. And if they're not, maybe some of the younger guys, or they go through that draft cycle, which hopefully the team is not stuck in forever. But then again, like, it's not a terrible thing to get more talent on this squad, especially when you look at how good 2025's draft class is.
Yeah, I think to Will's point, like, might be, you know, I'll answer that question at the end of the season, Cash, because I want to see. No, because I want to see
how these work.
No, because I want to see how this season plays out. Like Will
That's
mentioned, I want to know by the end of the season how many guys can I say with confidence on the roster that is a group of guys that they can build going forward. Because clearly they've, you know, under Masai, they've never gone full tanking, go in the lottery for a few years, get a core group. They're trying to find this core group within like drafting this like grab bag of rookies that they have coming in, betting on Scottie, betting on IQ, Grady, RJ as well. I want to know where Grady is at the end of the season. Like, how does IQ look? Even Scottie as well, right? He's got the big contract. We've seen what he can do. But do you actually have that number one guy, that centerpiece? If a lot of those questions are answered, then I don't think the franchise is lost. If we're still asking those questions after this season and they're drafting like 11th in the draft, then, you know, we're going to be asking this question again.
Yeah. And I think also this year will help us better evaluate Darko Rajakovic as a head coach because, look, in fairness to him, I'm not saying he had a good year last year, but in fairness to him, last year, and Will, you kind of touched on this, it was such like a mishmash of a roster, and it led to dysfunction, predictable dysfunction, because you had guys that knew they probably weren't going to be there long term, guys that, you know, even if you look back to the way they want to play under Darko and the way Siakam plays, like that never really made sense. There was just, for a lot of reasons, it didn't make sense. So kind of to Alex's point, you know, it's a wait and see year. I think that goes for Darko too.
Right.
But at least this year, and the reason I feel like they're getting back on track, and I know we talked about this on my appearance on your show as well, is that at least it feels like the self-awareness is back and like they know who they are. And that is a young team that is in some stage of a rebuild. And that's what they're going into the season as. They didn't like make some weird win now signing that's going to, you know, bump them from 10th to 7th in the East or something like that. They seem to understand who they are. They seem to be okay being this young team and seeing what they can be in the Darko system. You know, even if you just look at some of the low-key moves, like coming out of the draft with 4 players, turning Jalen McDaniels into Davion Mitchell and a couple picks. One of them is like a a future Portland second rounder that should be pretty early in the 2025. Those are the kind of like low key moves.
Yep.
You know, of asset accumulation and young talent accumulation. Even if it leads nowhere, at least they're doing them, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think their direction was kind of picked when they hired Darko.
Yeah.
Because that's a developmental coach who had not been a head coach in the NBA level. And what that always signifies is that they're going to rebuild. Yeah. Now, what was awkward was they still went into the season with Pascal and OG on the roster, but at least they resolved those and got some, measure of value back for both guys.
Well, for OG they did.
Yeah. The 3 first-round picks looks good, but, I think 2 of those have already been exhausted by this point, so there's only 1 more coming out of that Pascal trade. But I think with Darko, what was interesting was, we were down there in Vegas and had a quick chat with Darko. Darko was always very generous with his time, talks to media quite a bit, and one of the things he kind of talked about last year was just like, look, last year we put in a lot of like the offense, the Darko systems you mentioned. They've really took the Raptors from very much an isolation, pick and roll heavy team to like much more of like a spread it out, let's space the floor, let's run a lot of actions through the high post and stuff like that. They've done that aspect. And then Darko's point was like, now we really just got to like focus in on the defensive end. And I think that's where I like the direction of some of the acquisitions. When you look at who they've, acquired, like Davion Mitchell, for example, right? Somebody who can really be a steady backup point guard, but really has a chance to, make an impact defensively. Behind him is someone very similar in Jamal Shed, who they just drafted. And, I think the players that they have picked and acquired over the summer have really been more defensively oriented. When you look at the Raptors last season, like one of the main reasons they fell into double digits every game was their defense was terrible. And I got to say, they didn't really care that much defensively. There was a lot of like lack of detail.
One of the names, I mean, he's not here anymore, but like OG, who we know is easily one of the best defensive players in the league. We talk about that dysfunction and guys knowing they weren't going to be there anymore. I'm sorry, OG defensively had checked out. For his standards, by the end of his Raptors tenure, it checked out. And that kind of goes to what you were saying. It didn't seem like guys cared on that end.
OG's last play as a Raptor, and this is not to like disparage, we love OG.
Yeah, great defensive.
But like his last play as a Raptor, you can go look it up. The Raptors were in a very close game against Boston, 1-possession game, and he gambled for a steal, kind of like Draymond did against Pascal in 2019,
finals,
Game 6. But he gambled for a steal against Jaylen Brown, didn't get it. Jaylen Brown, set up a lob to Luke Cornett, I think, for the alley-oop. And you know what I mean? Like, it's weird because when you look at players' last plays, they're never like some sort of heroic moment. You know what I mean? Like, DeMar's last play is like smacking Jordan Clarkson in the head and getting ejected.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? Like, that's nothing to say about OG's overall tenure. But yeah, I mean, last year was just a mess. At least now and then they have clarity right now.
Yeah. Okay, so I mentioned some of the low-key moves, and you mentioned the 2 defensively that I like, that to me signify they kind of know who they are at least now, and they're starting to get back on the right track. 2 moves that obviously weren't as low-key, giving Scottie Barnes a 5-year max extension and re-signing Emmanuel Quickley for 5 years. We don't know yet because neither of these guys has played since signing these extensions. Just right now, at face value, Alex, we'll start with you. Are you confident that these were good deals that the Raptors made at these dollar figures?
I'm pretty confident in the Scottie one, just because if you look back at the draft class that he was in, like which player out of that draft class would you bet on more right now? Like, I know you're not going to say Evan Mobley over Scottie.
There's only one guy that's made the All-Star team from that draft class. That's Scottie Barnes. There's only one guy who won Rookie of the Year from that draft class. That's Scottie Barnes. You know what I mean?
You look at the Kay Cunninghams and all these other players. I feel like Scottie's way further along. So I feel like that's a good deal for them. And clearly the Raptors have reshaped their entire roster to build around Scottie as the number 1 guy. So you slot him in at this contract. I feel like you're going to see a lot of development from him. I feel good. IQ. Like, that's a wait and see for me. That's a wait and see for me because you've locked in the money for him to be like a premium starting point guard. And if he does not go on this trajectory where he continues improving, then you're locked into a contract that might not be as favorable for you.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't really quibble with the numbers. I think more than anything else, like, obviously the Scottie one was a no-brainer, right? Like, you are building your whole franchise around him. You sign him, don't play any games. You're completely happy with that. I think with Quickley too, once you've acquired a player through trade and he's about to become a restricted free agent, like you pretty much have to retain him. And at the same time, I think Quickley did show lots of good signs last season coming over from New York, because his role in New York is very different than the role he's going to be asked to play in Toronto. In New York, he was kind of like a Lou Williams type, like kind of like a microwave scorer off the bench, maybe even a Malik Monk type. And he really, really excelled in that role. I think also New York, obviously under Tibbs, obviously more of a veteran team, way better defensively. So even Quickley came with a strong defensive reputation. But the question marks were, can he be a playmaker? And can he sort of, extend his production as a starter?
Scale up with more usage and stuff.
I think for the most part he did that, but I think the question marks now after watching him, with the Raptors for last season is, can he guard his position defensively, right? Because especially when you're getting paid like $30+ million a year, ideally we don't have to cover for you defensively to that degree. We know he can score. We know he has the three-point shot down. He's a very accurate three-point shooter. He struggled going to the rim last year. He got a really good floater in New York. He didn't really hit that much in Toronto. We'll see if that's sort of just a stylistic change. And I think more than anything else, that you would ideally like to see Quickley maybe flirt with that all-star level. You know what I mean? Like when you look at Eastern Conference point guards, can he get to the level of like a Darius Garland, for example, who has been a point guard in the past, but last year was pretty bad, but he has a pretty high, ceiling, I would say. Can he get on that level? Because, ideally when you sign a guy for that much with some upside, you hope that there's some, all-star potential eventually.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. The only thing I'd say is just because of the way the cap is booming, if you look at Quickley's contract and break it down by like percentage of the cap, it's worth 21%-ish in the first year, and by the fifth year, I think it's 19% of the cap.
Sure.
So really, like if you compare it to other, point guards around the league, you're essentially asking him to just be a solid starting point guard. And don't get me wrong, I'm with you guys. You obviously want him to approach that all-star potential because that raises the entire franchise's ceiling. But if we're just talking like on-court value to match dollar value, if he's just a solid starting point guard, I think the deal is fine.
Yeah, I think that's fair, but it's like you start thinking about like slotting these guys in. Like you slotted in Scottie into this slot, you have IQ into the slot. RJ's contract's gonna be coming up pretty soon too, right? Like you've got two guys slotted in, like now you have how many more slots left to sign some of these premium guys at those contracts. Ideally you want to feel really good about Scottie and IQ as like two guys that can be at the forefront.
Yeah.
And Scottie can be that guy. IQ, I still got to wait and see on that one.
The question with IQ, weirdly, is like, can him and Scottie develop some chemistry? Because I think immediately when he got traded over, it was like, okay, they're going to run pick and roll together. It's been great. They didn't really run that many actions together as a tandem. And especially if you're going to be the top two, you got to have a lot of go-to plays with those
They
two
look
guys.
great together. Look at that.
I mean,
but I'm with you because on-court style-wise, like, in terms of their games, they fit together so perfectly. And that was the thing, right? When you traded for Emmanuel Quickley, he was the guard, that movement shooting guy that fits so perfectly beside Scottie Barnes, and they didn't really get to explore that much. Obviously, Barnes got hurt too. But I think by and large, I think we're all in agreement. The Barnes thing's a no-brainer. Like, I got a 22-year-old all-star who in 2 of his 3 seasons has looked like a budding superstar.
Yep.
In terms of Quickley, I mean, Zach, you can bring up his numbers. I think we have them, his numbers just as a Raptor. Like, If you're getting that kind, I know numbers aren't everything. They don't tell you all about their on-court impact. But in general, I think if you're getting that kind of production, I'd like to see the floater more efficient like it was earlier in his career. But if you're getting that kind of production from him on that contract, it's fine. Again, I think they, like Alex was saying, they got to find more guys though. And all of this to me is really beating around the bush. And like the big question, I know you guys have kind of already brought it up, is it all comes down to Scottie Barnes. The question that they need to answer, and if the answer is yes, then they are fine and they're on the right track, is Scottie Barnes a true franchise guy? Like, Will, I'll start with you. Do you think Scottie Barnes, based on what you've seen so far, is the kind of guy that will be, in his prime, the best player on a contending team?
I think the one thing that he's missing right now is just a go-to scoring move. Something that he can go to whenever you want. Whether it's a spot on the floor, whether it's a specific type of move, but just that one go-to move that he can get to all the time, that he can create for himself, and that is he's so efficient at it that it demands other teams to double team him all the time on that type of shot. I think that's really, for me, like the only thing that's missing, because the rest of his game, he's a really strong defender, right? He could play on-ball defense, but I think he's even better with the off-ball defense, very disruptive. Last year was averaged, over a block and a steal a game, stuff like that. Multiple games he had like 5 blocks, which is really rare for a wing player, right? He's a guy who can rebound the ball at a really strong rate. He's obviously got a really good passing vision as well. And then when you talk about just like the scoring touch in sort of like the in-between moments, I think he's really good at that. But I think for me, the self-creation, whether that's isolation, whether that's pick and roll, those things got to come up for him. And I think that, maybe you can develop that, but also at the same time, it's hard to just bank on him developing just like a can't miss type of shot all the time. You do see it over time. Like there are certain players who can sort of get to that level. So I'm not going to rule it out for him. But until he shows me that, I think that's a fair question to ask, because even when you think about getting Emmanuel in here or RJ in here, it's sort of the question is sort of like, can you get other scorers in here so he can sort of help facilitate all of that? But for me, it's like the main franchise player, in addition to facilitating, right? It's not like Jokic doesn't facilitate. Come on, he's averaging triple-double as a center. But he also can get you those like one-on-one baskets when you need. So he's got to get to that level.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me too, like looking at it as like the number one guy, it's like some of the intangibles in terms of just like leadership and some of that stuff, like that comes with the responsibility too, right? And like, based on the sources I talked to within the organization, like Scottie, is very about like just being in the gym, all of that stuff. But like, I want him to, take a leadership role on defense. Like I want him to become like one of the premium like defenders in the league too, like one of the best two-way players. And like just he's got to take on that role of like taking in some of these rookies now, some of these other guys. Like people got to follow his lead too. Like for me, like all the on-court stuff that Will talked about, definitely. But now that you're the number one guy, it's like, yo, when you're Giannis in Milwaukee, when you're like LeBron on the Lakers, like everybody follows your lead. Like you've got to set the tone and all of that stuff. So I think I want to see him grow into that role as well.
Yeah, I didn't know Alex Charania was coming in here with these organizational sources, baby. Let's go.
We call him Wange.
Let's go.
Wangebaum.
No, I'm with
Scotty's in the gym.
What a scoop. He's a basketball player is in the gym. Congratulations, man.
I mean, listen, if you just go by production and you kind of try to find comparables to Scottie, even if you just look at the year he just had, 18 plus points, 8 plus rebounds, 6 plus assists, at least a steal, at least a block. The only guys that have done it are Giannis, Kevin Garnett, LeBron James, and Larry Bird. That's it. And those guys did it between their ages 26 to 37 seasons. Scottie did it at age 22. And again, they're very arbitrary numbers. I'm not saying he's going to be those guys. But what I do think, and I think this ties all of our points together, is I think he can end up being, and I think he will end up being that level of player, like a genuine superstar who could be the best player on a contending team. But I don't necessarily think it's going to be in the traditional, like, 25 plus points per game. Like, I think he might be the best player on a contending team without being the leading scorer on that team, Okay. And I think that's where maybe some of the scoring deficiencies like require a certain player around him. Whether they have that in-house right now or they got to find it via the draft or other ways, that's why you stockpile assets so maybe you can make a trade later. I think Scottie can be the best overall basketball player, like all-around player on a contending team. I don't know if he'll be the leading scorer on that team.
But I'll flip that question to you, though. Who was the last guy who did that?
That is a great question.
It's basically like Magic Johnson.
Which
again, will be a phenomenal outcome for Scottie Barnes.
But and again, I'm not saying Scottie Barnes is going to be Magic Johnson. But I mean, if you go back to his rookie year, Magic himself came out and talked about seeing similarities. And I think if you're just talking about style, that is more the type.
Absolutely,
again, we're not it's clear we're not saying he's going to be Magic Johnson. But if you're talking about style of star, big point guards who's more like can obviously put the ball in the hoop, but is more of a facilitator. Obviously can defend like. He is more in that mold, right? Like a more skilled Sean Marion kind of thing, where it's like,
All right, I feel like he's
better than Sean.
We got to put the ceiling much higher than that,
right?
Yeah.
But that's what he's a more skilled version of that. He's like the Swiss Army knife, and he's not necessarily a pure scorer, but he can do everything.
It's like a big man
but
Jason Kidd.
You can develop scoring. Like we just saw that here in Toronto with Pascal, right?
Well,
like
even look at Scottie's shooting development already.
Exactly. Like when Pascal came in, like he did not have a bag. As rookie, he was like. Let's throw head-to-head passes, and he will finish in transition, layups, stuff like that. His coach, Dwayne Casey, was like, he reminds me of like a really good Bo Outlaw, like, you know what I mean? And like,
not even Travis Outlaw,
not even Travis, Bo. But I think eventually over time, because he's so hardworking, because he put in all the sort of work off the court by himself too as well, where it's just like he got to the point where he actually can score. Now, he's not like a elite one-on-one scorer or anything like that, but like he's developed into a really, really effective scorer. He's like carved out the mid-range game for himself, a post game, stuff like that. I think that like those are the steps that Scottie will take, and once he gets that scoring element into the rest of his game, I think that's where it's good, because a lot of players you worry about sort of like their focus coming in, they're guys who get baskets, especially younger players, right? The guys in this draft class, even Jalen Green, who got drafted ahead of him, it's like very much focused on like, let's get a basket. I got like more moves than let's say a Scottie would to score. But then when you get double teamed, are you able to adjust to that? You know what I mean? Are you able to play out of that? I think Scottie already has all those other aspects. That's where it's really enticing, where it's like you add that scoring element as well, it's game over.
Yeah, I'm trying to, and as you're giving me that answer, I'm trying to think in my head if I can answer your question about, like the last guy to probably the best player on a championship team without leading. Like the only thing I can think of is you might have to go back to the 2004 Pistons and pick, because I think Rip Hamilton was their leading.
Sure, yeah.
So, and I don't think he was their best overall player, or maybe some of the Spurs teams with Duncan. But again, that's obviously an extremely
Duncan is probably
high bar.
One.
Like, we're talking about a top 10 player all time. And I don't know if we're seeing that for Scottie. Okay, I think we've talked a lot of big picture stuff.
Yeah.
If we just talk immediate, like short term, 2024, 2025.
Yeah.
Are the Raptors a playoff team, a play-in team, or a bottom 5 team again in the East?
I think they can choose. They can decide to whether be a play-in team or a bottom 5 team this season. We actually, check out the Hello and Welcome podcast this week. We went through the entire 82 game, Raptors schedule, and I think we came out to the Raptors winning around like 30 games. I think that's where the Vegas odds makers have them around too. We were talking about the Eastern Conference who are looking at the overall NBA, like how many true teams are really tanking. It seems like there's a lot of competitive teams now. So there's not like there's going to be a lot of just like easy wins out there for them. So for me, if you were to ask me, I think they're going to be like on the fringe of the play-in, just because in the East, it feels like you can just be 10th by like default.
Yeah.
And then I think towards the end of the season, they're going to make a decision and just fall out of the race.
Yeah, I think Masai's approach to this has traditionally been, okay, this is the roster we have. Let's at least give it 20 games, right? 20 games is usually that mark where last year was around 25 games where they traded OG. Yeah. Back in 2013, that's around the time where he traded Rudy Gay as well. So he's going to go into the season at least give it 20 games. I mean, realistically, very few trades are consummated before December, at least. You know what I mean? Like every team's at least going to see what they got.
Yeah. Plus the guys that have signed in as free agents the offseason can't be traded till mid-December anyway.
Exactly. A lot of them can't even be traded now until January too, depending on whether or not you use bird rights. So like you're like you have that first bit of the season to assess, and I think for the players, like if they want to keep this thing rolling, if they want to like showcase what they have, they got to come together, they got to form their own identity. I think one of the most fun times as a Raptor fan was that 2013-2014 season where like they had no expectations. The expectation of anything was like, we're going to tank for Wiggins, look how good this draft class is, and all of a sudden they came together, and of course it was guys who like took the team, by the collar and was like, look, we're just not going to lose and we're going to make our own thing here. And that was Kyle Lowry and that was DeMar DeRozan. And I think that that's the opportunity that this team has right now. It's not like they don't have talent. And they had actually added more depth than they had last year. I mean, towards the end of last season, they were literally signing guys off the street to like start games. Like Malik Williams, who like very few people might know, but like they signed him to a 10-day contract and they started him like the very same day. And they lost by like 48 points, which is a franchise record. But like seriously, Garrett Temple was playing center at some times. Like, guy, I'm not even kidding. These are real things that happen. So this season, at least they're way better stocked than last year. Like, I do think that there is sort of this like a realistic chance for the Raptors to really exceed what the expectations are on them, because they don't have any expectations based on how they finished last year.
Yeah, and the reason I think they're a play-in team is because if you look at the East, like I'm with you, Alex, in that in general, it's a very competitive league, and the West especially. But if you look at the East, like there's 5 teams in my mind: Washington, Brooklyn, Charlotte, Detroit, and Chicago, that I think the Raptors are better than. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible for one of those teams to be better than the Raptors.
Charlotte got some talent.
Charlotte has
they're
some
also
talent,
very unserious players.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even and like Chicago seems like they're finally ready to initiate a rebuild.
Yeah.
They never seem ready to make any decision, but I feel like that's coming for them. Washington and Brooklyn, unless the Raptors really try to, I can't see any way they're worse than those two teams. So those 5 teams right there, like unless you're picking one of those teams to be better than the Raptors, then you're basically saying, well, then they're a top 10 team and they're a play-in team. So I think they're a play-in team by default and not much better than that. But I think that could be okay depending on how like if they are a fun young team that, engineers some excitement in the fan base again, and it seems like they're up and coming. Like they're a 9th or 10th place team that goes to the play-in, but it seems it's because Scottie takes another step. It's because Quickley looks like Grady Dick maybe looks like a starter. If all these things are coming to fruition, I think that's a fine result. If they're like a 35-win, 9 or 10 seed in the play-in that ends up with a bad draft pick, but we don't really feel there's been that growth, that's a bit of a disaster.
It's going to be interesting because, like, this upcoming draft is so good.
Yeah.
Like, there's, like, at least 5 guys that I would take over number 1 or number 2 in Risa Shea or Sarr in this year's draft. Like, easily some of these guys that you see coming up. But I think because the lottery odds have flattened so much, like, you look at, like, the Hawks winning the number 1 pick. Like, they were in the play-in.
Yeah.
And they still end up with the number 1 pick. Now, maybe it was like a Bargnani level draft of, like, all right, you get the number 1 pick type. Yeah. But, you don't get a number 1 type of player. But still, like, I think for the Raptors, like, they will give this team that chance. I think it's a lot harder to shut this team down though midseason. Like, you can't be doing that like 2-3 years in a row. At some point, like, players will check out of that situation.
Well, and it's even like we talked about the Scottie Barnes extension. Okay, he's now under contract through 2030. We've all been around long enough and have watched the NBA long enough to know that doesn't mean they have him till 2030. Like, he's under contract through 2030, and at some point, and I'm not saying it's going to happen next year because he obviously knows what he signed up for. Like, he's had conversations with Masai in the front office as well. But you also, like, you don't want to get into a pattern where he's used to a situation where, like, you're only really playing relevant ball for, like, 3 months a year. You don't want that.
Yeah, can we check with the source on that one, man? Can league sources confirm that Scottie Barnes had conversations with the front office?
Slow news season in August. I don't really have anything new here. No, but I think to your point, too, though, it's really like if they're in the play-in, it's not really about what position they end up in. It's really not even about, how many wins they get. We always joke about wins and lessons and stuff. It's really about going back to what we talked about earlier, how we feel about the team at the end of the season. Because there can be two exact versions of a 35 and 47 team 100%. That you feel great about. You see some of these rookies come through. You can see that they're going to be part of the core. You see Grady Dick maybe establish himself as a starter. All the stuff we already talked about with Scottie versus just backing into a play-in spot just because there's 5 terrible teams. Yeah. In the East.
Well, I mean, the pressure is totally different, right? Because, like, before the pressure was like, are you going to extend Pascal? Are you going to re-sign OG Anunoby? Are you going to sign Fred VanVleet, at that time? What's the future of Nick Nurse? Like, there was just, like, too much going on at that time. Versus now where it's like all these guys are under contract and you have, like, a 2-3 year runway of, like, okay, we have this group. It's on you guys now. Okay, we've invested in you guys. We've given you all the opportunities. We hired you a developmental coach. We've gotten you a couple of other pieces to work with. Let's try to make something out of this. And honestly, at the end of the day, it's up to the players. You know what I mean? Like, that's why people respect Kyle and DeMar so much in this town because they actually took this team from being like 20 years of just, or maybe 15 years of just straight losing. Right, all the time to like actually fighting hard, making it meaningful to wear a Raptors jersey, and that's why we love them so much.
Absolutely, I think in general, at least going into the year, it'll be more exciting, more fun to see what this team is like. Just see what this young team can do. I'm not, they might not end up doing anything, but like you said, they've invested in these guys. They're all under contract. They should be here at least in the short term. Now it's kind of like, show us what you got. What are you, right? Like as a team, and we're gonna find out. Okay, I think enough Raptors talk. It's dominated the show. Obviously, wanted you guys in to talk about that. But dog days of the summer, not exactly scintillating news out there in the NBA, but a couple fun.
Man. That's what we got him for.
Gershon Yabusele to the Sixers.
I mean, that's a big one. Couple fun topics we can touch on before I let you guys go. Will, I'll give you the first one. Alex, I'll give you the second one. So Noah Lyles obviously has had this kind of, I don't know if you'd call it beef, it's kind of beef with the NBA and with NBA players dating back to last summer when he first brought up the idea of how he was basically perturbed. He was annoyed at the fact that NBA champions call themselves world champions.
Sure.
Instead of just NBA champions. In an Olympic year this year, it's obviously snowballed because you had guys like Josh Hart coming out and saying they were rooting against the fellow American on the track. Lyles saying different stuff about the American team, people joking around that they're probably hate watching each other during the Olympics. I'll ask you, Will, do you think Noah Lyles had a point from the very beginning and see where he's coming from, or do you think this guy's just the biggest troll on the planet?
I think it's pretty clear he's the biggest troll on the planet. Like, he's a rare combination of being like ultra talented and ultra annoying. And usually how annoying you're allowed to be is relative to how talented you are. But he's literally the world's fastest man, which we all agreed to give that title, unless you're like Michael Johnson or something. But like you when you win the 100 meters, like you are the world's fastest man. He's the world's fastest man, and we still find him annoying, which is usually like you're given that grace to like talk your stuff when you're that fast, for example. But yeah, I think he's just trolling, man. But I mean, like, because basically his point is like, you're not technically the world champions because the world champions is a moniker you get to the World Cup winner and all that kind of stuff, which is like, yeah, that's technically true, but it does feel more like you're correcting somebody on their punctuation rather than you're saying that their whole sentence is wrong. You know what I mean? Like, it's like,
you know what this reminds me of is like when was it who was that going up against the Rookie of the Year race with Ben Simmons?
Oh, and was it Donovan Mitchell? Yeah,
and they were trying to define what rookie was.
Right, he showed up
and he wore a hoodie with a definition of what rookie was. That's what it reminds me of when you're talking about this.
Okay, so I think originally I agreed with his point, and I still agree with his larger point. Like, I've always thought,
he's technically correct.
Right, in North American pro sports, in the leagues, you're not, even if we acknowledge that it's the best club league in the world, you're not the world champions, you're the NBA champions, you're the NFL, you're the Super Bowl champions. Even though we know there's no other better football team out there, it's a club league thing. It's not an international tournament. This isn't the Club World Cup in soccer. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
sure, yeah.
But to your point, I think he is such a troll, and it in some ways has become so unlikable that it almost makes you forget that he had a point to begin with. And the perfect example of that to me is, I don't know if you guys saw last week, I think it was with, he was on with Shannon Sharp.
Yeah.
And he said he doesn't know who Nikola Jokic is. Like, Shannon Sharp asked him something about Nikola Jokic, and he said, oh, I don't know who that is. And that, to me, reminded me how big of a troll this guy is, because if you go back to how this started to begin with a year ago, it literally started with him saying, so I was watching the finals, and this was 2023. He was watching the 2023 finals that the Denver Nuggets won, that Nikola Jokic was the MVP in. That's how this whole thing started. And now he's saying, I don't know who that is. And that, to me, like, just nailed it. It's like, okay, this guy, I can't even take what he says serious anymore, even if he does make a point, because he's just too much of a troll.
So, Cash, are you calling him Fugazi, or is he officially Fugazi?
Official. This might be the first Fugazi stamp I'm putting on the Unfiltered Show. Noah Lyles, absolute fraud, off the track, on the track.
Yeah, I mean, we're not really going to talk about him for another 3 years at least.
Fair.
Another 4 years maybe. So
in fairness to him, that is a big part of it.
You got to get it in when you can, you know? Like,
no, the problem with him is, like, he just got no aura, man. Like, you talk about this too. It's like, if you're the world's fastest man, you win 100 meters.
Like, you don't think Usain Bolt was cocky?
Yeah,
of course
Usain
he
Bolt.
Was,
think about Donovan Bailey and all this stuff. Like, you win the 100, and then you come out, you get COVID, and you battle through and you win the bronze in the 200. That's supposed to be a cool story. And even that wasn't cool. They rolled him out in a wheelchair after, like Paul Pierce. Like, there's just nothing he does just like exudes anything like cool or confidence. And he's going on these interviews, like you mentioned, and he doesn't even know what he's talking about. Like, he's not really educated in that stuff. So put the Fugazi stamp on him.
Man, And I get, last thing I'll say, I get, because what you're saying is you're not going to talk about for another 3 years. I feel like that's a big part of what he's trying to do, right? He's just trying to bring as much attention, eyeballs, advertising dollars, whatever, to track. I just think,
but it's not to track; it's to him.
Yes,
because I'm not gonna be watching more track because Noah Lyles like dissed like Nikola Jokic. I'm just gonna be like, cool, okay. Like, I'm gonna go back to watching basketball now. Like,
okay,
sorry, man.
What I do think you would watch,
even
though you're not a wrestling guy, is a Jalen Brunson Tyrese Halliburton wrestling match. Which, after they both appeared on WWE, I think in June, Jalen Brunson has now last week or this week said he's open to the idea of, like, in the future potentially doing like a legit WWE wrestling match against Tyrese Halliburton. Alex, I know you and I are both old school wrestling guys from when we were kids. So I just got to ask you, if you could take any two characters in the NBA, they don't even have to both be players, just any two characters in and around the NBA right now, or multiple characters, I don't know.
Yeah.
Pit them in a WWE match against each other. Who is it and why?
Can I modify this a little bit?
Modify.
I was thinking about
Do your
this
thing.
for 3 hours last night. And, we love pay-per-views. And growing up, WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, one of my low-key favorites was Survivor Series, when it was like a 4-on-4 match, okay? So I'm going to have Draymond Green. He's going to have his 4. It's going to be Draymond. He got to bring Steph. Steph will be there. I guess he's going to wrestle. He's going to bring Mo Spates as an enforcer.
Wow. What?
And then because of the clutch connections, LeBron James will be there. LeBron and Draymond going to dance out to some, music. So that's the 4, okay? Then the 4 that they're going to face, the music hits. Jordan Poole comes out.
Wow.
We got
He's
Jordan
getting
Poole.
knocked out, so.
Yeah. Rudy Gobert,
He's also getting choked out.
Yusuf Nurkic.
Yeah, he's getting
These are
punched.
all of Draymond's beefs, and then Kevin Durant's music hits
Wow,
because
that's
okay.
he's
All
like,
right.
you know what? I wanted to stay in Golden State. You know, you made a mess of it. You told me you didn't need me because you do your fake dribble handoffs, and apparently that's better than me scoring 35 points a game. And we got Steve Kerr as the ref,
No one's up.
Wow. Yo,
and that's my matchup. And I think Draymond's team actually wins.
yeah, but if in that
amazing.
format, KD's gonna be like the mystery eighth man. Like you go into the match, no one.
Yeah,
knows
yeah.
him
He
until
comes
his
out like
music
Hulk
hits.
Hogan in the Hulkamania, and then he rips open the NWO. So
All right, building on that and modifying it, I'm gonna come up with a match
Okay.
that only makes sense in the wrestling world because the guys are like 50 years apart, and in a real fight, we know the younger guy
Right.
would win. And I think both these guys would also fit so perfectly in the wrestling world. Give me Jimmy Butler versus Pat Riley. Jimmy, it's to get a max
Oh,
contract. You
man.
know those like
in what, man? A custom
you know
Italian
those like
shooting
you're
contest?
fired or
Yeah.
not matches and stuff. Jimmy Butler wants this max contract that the Heat might not be prepared to get him. Jimmy Butler versus Pat Riley for the right to get that max contract or not. Special guest referee Eric Spoelstra.
Wow.
You don't know which side Spo's on. Now that's,
Wow.
I think those two matches we got a card.
Damn.
We got a card here.
Like
Wow.
that.
Wow. I thought you guys were gonna say like Embiid versus Jokic or something.
I actually thought
You know?
about that.
Well,
but then
Embiid
I
would pull
thought-
up with an injury last
Yeah,
minute.
exactly.
Embiid's probably gonna cheat and pull out a chair or something.
Yeah, and
Yo,
then
they start
crotch chop.
chanting USA when Embiid comes
Oh,
out.
brother.
Oh man, all right. I feel like this is a good way to good time to put a bow on this thing. So Will, Alex, appreciate you guys coming in, spending all this time with us. You know how much I love talking Raptors with you, talking ball, and this will definitely not be the last time I have you in here.
I'm looking forward to it, man.
Yeah, appreciate it. Love you, Cash.
Make sure you guys are subscribed to the Hello and Welcome podcast. Watch it on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you're liking and subscribing all our content here at The Score. Let's get another plaque up there, which doesn't come for 1 million. We got to get 800,000 more, like 798 more thousand. But this show will help get us there. Thank you to Zach, Adrian, and Matt in the control room. Thank you to all of you for listening. For Alex Wong, for Will Lou, I'm Joseph Casciaro. See you next time.